Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Holistic Perspective. Our topic tonight is herbs that have been used in the treatment of cancer, and we're going to talk about the uh, different kinds of anti-cancer herbs that have been used and kind of the different categories they fall in, and kind of the strategies of why you would use certain kinds versus other kinds. And I really enjoy my job, at least this part, because I really enjoy doing research and collecting information. And I want to make a couple of notes about the whole thing with cancer. Um, I've been reading books on natural treatment of cancer. I have worked with some people with cancer. I don't have a huge clinical practice because I spend most of my time writing and doing education. So I don't have a ton of personal experience with this, but I also know people who do have a lot of personal experience with this, and like Kimberly Ballas and so forth, and look at their protocols and everything. So I'm sharing this information with you to kind of just give you some ideas. Cancer is a very difficult condition to treat in any way, but one of the things I dislike is I dislike seeing people who are just throwing remedies at people without thoughtfully looking at the situation and what is really warranted. And so by kind of going over some of these options of what's available, it at least give you some ideas of some things that might be helpful with various individuals depending on what they might be going through. Now, let's start off with a quote from an eclectic physician who wrote a book on the natural treatment of cancer way back in the early part of the last century, Eli Jones. And he said in his book, "The medical profession have been trying to understand the cause of cancer for many years." Remember that this is 1921. "Every 6 months, it seems, we read in the public press that the cause of cancer has been discovered. Periodically, students in the laboratory announce to the world that a serum has been discovered that will cure cancer. Vast sums of money have been expended in erecting cancer hospitals and institutes for cancer research. Remedies have been lauded time and again as a cure for the disease, yet people keep on dying in the same old-fashioned way." And I think that's just so interesting because it 90 years later, it's still the same thing. We just keep hearing, the latest cures, latest discovery, lots of money being spent on cancer research and everything. But the problem is that they're not looking at cancer holistically. They're not looking at the big picture of the human body and human health in general. And so that's why it's important that we look at things in a little broader perspective. James Duke, who's the former United States Department of Agriculture person who's been involved with the AHG and actually spoken for Nature Sunshine a couple of times, he noted that the National Cancer Institute has screened 35,000 herbs and found that 3,000 of them had some activity against cancer. So there's a lot of plants that have been screened for anti-tumor activity. Mostly they're looking for drugs. They're looking for magic bullet chemical compounds out of these plants that they can use to treat cancer. But with 5,000 years of ethnopharmacological history, shows that native peoples have actually used a lot of these plants successfully against cancer, and so they're certainly in some cases probably as effective or if not more effective than some of the drugs. The key here in understanding this is to realize that the drugs and some of the other medical things are they may cure, they may not cure, but they sure lower the quality of life of a person. Whereas I think in many cases, natural therapy, the person may not extend their life much more than if they went the other way, but they probably will have a much higher quality of life with a lot of the natural remedies than they would with the orthodox ones. I mean, if I had cancer, certainly think I would take the natural route over the chemotherapy radiation route, just based on what I've seen of people who've gone through the other. Anyway, anti-cancer herbs have specific properties that have been identified in the scientific research. Now, one of the properties is alterative, which is the bulk of our traditional anti-cancer remedies are alternatives, and the first ones we're going to talk about. we're also going to talk about antioxidants, which really are not exactly remedies so much for the treatment of cancer as they are for prevention, but some of the antioxidant remedies that are helpful in prevention are also helpful in therapy. Also immune building or immune stimulating or immune amphoteric means kind of balancing the immune system. We're going to look at some of the remedies for that. We're also going to talk about cytotoxic remedies, which is some of the ones that you get actual anti-cancer drugs from, but these are plants that actually have an effect of directly killing cancer cells. There are also nutritive and restorative remedies. We're not going to talk about those, but that's basically working on just underlying good nutrition and good health with a person who has cancer. You know, getting lots of fresh fruits and vegetables in them, you know, maybe giving them things like Green Zone or Tigo or other things to just boost their basic underlying nutrition. Obviously, this is not a class on treating cancer because we could probably you know, put together a day-long class on treating cancer with herbs and pull in, you know, several different experts, and we'd still, you know, would have a lot to learn. But it does give you some options. There are many books that have been written about this subject. I have quite a few. Michael Chiara has a really good book on treating cancer with herbs. Donald Yance is another professional member of the American Herbalist Guild, also has a book on healing cancer with herbs. Anyway, so I advise you, if you're interested in this topic, to really do some research on it. It's a difficult illness to treat even for experienced healers, and there's no magic bullet. In fact, I really, I get, you know, I just had today, I saw like 3 emails, people not with cancer, but with really serious stuff that are emailing me and give me a few paragraphs of information and say, can you help? And I feel really bad because I'd like to help, but you know, every one of those cases would probably take me an hour to even begin to evaluate to try to figure out what's going on with that. There aren't any magic bullets for any serious illnesses. You have to really look carefully at the situation. Some of the things that are important to understand about cancer is it has both a physical side of it and an emotional side of it. And I think that the best therapy comes when you try to deal with both sides. On the physical side, you have anaerobic cells. Those are cells that are living off of a fermentive process that are basically not living on an oxygen energy generating process, that are multiplying out of control. They're greedy little buggers who are consuming, you know, about 15 times the normal energy produced by other cells and growing about 15 times as fast. They thrive in a toxic, low oxygen environment and in an over acid environment. So basically, if you have cancer, you have that low oxygen, toxic, over acid environment. And killing cancer cells is not going to remove the low oxygen, toxic environment. Also, there's often problems with heavy metals and petrochemical solvents and other things that have damaged cellular integrity. In addition, one of the things that is probably a major cause of cancer that we don't talk about so often is electromagnetic pollution and damage from radiation. Dr. Hans Nieper in Europe believed that 70% of all cancers were caused by electromagnetic pollution. And this has me deeply concerned for all of our young people carrying around cell phones constantly being exposed to electromagnetic radiation, especially up in the brain area, seems to be a big trigger for brain tumors. Now, on the other side, a lot of people with cancer tend to have a similar emotional profile. They tend to be more self-sacrificing people who take care of others at the expense of their self. They often suffer from low self-esteem and deep-seated anger because they're giving so much and receiving not much in return. And they therefore have a loss of a desire to live because their life is so unhappy. And there may be a trigger, a tragic emotional trigger or some stressful event that just basically takes them over the edge and triggers this to start growing And there's some evidence that most people, I never say all because, you know, everybody's different, and you can never like blanket statement anything, because as soon as I like think I've got something solved, an exception comes up. So, but Dr. Eli Jones, who I mentioned earlier, believed that cancer was primarily a disease of innervation and nervous exhaustion. In other words, a disease of stress. And so I think that there's a huge stress factor in cancer. And then, of course, getting the diagnosis of cancer increases that stress factor. Some of the research in analyzing the different quote-unquote active ingredients in herbs, the isolated chemical compounds, has helped us understand how some of the actions by which these things work. But herbs are not magic bullet single chemical compounds. They're incredible complex mixtures of compounds. But some of the ways in which they might work include stimulating DNA repair, which can be done with various sulfur-containing compounds in them, producing antioxidant effects to help cool down inflammation and free radical damage with things like carotenoids and ascorbic acid and polyphenols. And then inhibiting the production of or promoting the induction of protective enzymes that basically help break down cancers, which is proteases via indoles. Inhibiting enzymes that activate cancer, such as flavonoids and tannins, and also getting a better oxygenation to the tissues by bioflavonols and rare elements like germanium. Selenium has some anti-cancer activity, and so forth. So let's look at our first class of remedies, the alteratives, which are probably the most widely used and traditional remedies for cancer. Alteratives are basically remedies that clean up the toxic environment in the body. They act in kind of a slow, methodical manner to kind of like drain out the swampy toxic condition of the body, improving liver function, improving lymphatic function. Many of them tend to soften hardened masses, which includes not only hard tumors, but cysts, swollen hardened lymph nodes, and so forth. They're generally never used alone to treat cancer. They're typically combined to create formulas, and many of them are very gentle remedies, and they work well in rather large doses, usually taken as a tea or a decoction, where you are like going to drink, you know, a quart or two of this every day. One of these remedies is pau d'arco or lapacho. This is an alterative remedy for the inner bark of a tree. It has some anti-cancer compounds in it, and it's a very mild alternative, so you can actually, you know, drink like a quarter more of this a day, which is, you know, the way I would recommend doing it, that or an alcohol extract if you're really dealing with cancer. This was discovered in Brazil, where it was used as an anti-cancer remedy. Physicians at the hospitals basically found that it had some really good ability to cure a number of diseases, including leukemia. The claim was it eliminated pain and increased red blood cell counts. The naphthoquinones are the elements that actually this does have some cytotoxic properties, but the real cytotoxicity is in the isolated, concentrated lapachol. So it's sort of like pawpaw sulreg. If you actually use the raw herb, you wouldn't really get a strong enough dose of it, have a significant anti-tumor activity. So you'd have to get the concentrated extract in order to have a cytotoxic effect. But in lower doses, it's an immune stimulant, and it's also an alterative, so it kind of helps clean up the environment. To get some of the benefit of these naphthoquinone compounds like lapachol, you have to do a tincture because they're not very water soluble, and therefore if you're trying to use this with people who've got tumors or leukemia, you probably want to use an alcohol extract. One of the main anti-cancer herbs that's been around for a long time and has been used in numerous ways against cancer is a very mild, very gentle herbal remedy called red clover. It's a principal ingredient in Essiac tea and the Hoxsey formula, and there's two things that it mainly does. One is it's a lymph cleanser and gentle detoxifier. It helps again to have this effect of softening hardened masses, but it also contains isoflavones that are phytoestrogenic, which basically block estrogen receptor sites. They don't stimulate estrogen receptor sites, they block them, which means that this can be a very good remedy when dealing with estrogen-dependent cancers, of which prostate, uterus, and especially breast cancer are evident. And since breast tissue is mostly lymphatic tissue, I would say that this would be a very good herb to use as a part of a protocol for someone who has breast cancer. Red clover works with cancer as just, like say, a general detoxifier, but it also is useful for hardening or for softening hardened lumps, cysts, swollen lymph nodes, and tumors. But again, it's generally not used by itself. It's usually used as part of a formula, and it's often taken in a liquid form as a tea, so that if you like we're combining it with burdock and some other anti-cancer alternatives, and then you were drinking a quart or two of this a day, so you're getting the liquid to help flush the toxins out. That's how traditionally this thing would have been used. Interestingly enough, echinacea is also alternative, and I should have actually put this one also in the immune stimulant category, because this echinacea both has a lymph cleansing action, and it also basically also increases natural killer cell activity. It's NK cell activity, which the natural killer cells are the cells that kill cancer cells, and it contains arbenogalactin, which is activating the immune system and activates the macrophages that would kill tumors. And a lot of people with cancer, because the chemotherapy and the radiation run down their immune system, get secondary infections. So this helps to rebuild their immune system to help keep them from getting infections. And it also has some effect on cancer pain. Burdock, Articum lapa, is like red clover. It's a major anti-cancer herb that's very mild in action. Burdock has been eaten as a food, so it's got a tonic effect, nourishing to the body. It does contain substances that have been shown to reduce the formation of tumors. The root is the part that you'll find in all the Nature Sunshine formulas, but the seeds are also used, and an alcohol extract of the seeds has been shown to have some benefit against leukemia, lymphoid leukemia. So like red clover, this is an alternative and usually used as part of the formula. It's also been used for boils, abscesses, carbuncles, cysts, etc. So it again has this gentle detoxifying, kind of softening the mass of nasty tissue and helping the body clear it out. It appears to really kind of nourish the general health of the person who has cancer while gently detoxifying the body, which is real important because people with cancer tend to get run down. Their system gets depleted, exhausted. The cancer is using up the energy and nutrients in the body, which runs them down, and they need this kind of gentle nourishment. According to Michael Moore, who's a very famous Southwest herbalist, passed away a few years back, but really some great books. He says that it helps to deactivate cancer-causing chemicals. This one I'd say works pretty well in capsules, but it also can be used as a decoction or a tincture. Cat's claw is both an alterative and an immune stimulant like echinacea. It contains substances that enhance the immune system, and it's also a really good digestive tract remedy. I had the chance to meet with Brett Davis, a chiropractor who wrote the first article on cat's claw, or Unidogado, introducing it into the American marketplace. So he had really introduced America to this herb from South America, and he believed it to be one of the very, very best remedies there is for helping to regulate the gut, to help normalize the gut membranes, to reduce inflammation, to help get rid of parasites and so forth. And that, again, is working on that general overall health. Since 70% of the immune system is in the gut, it seems to have some effect on regulating immune responses from the gut. It's also an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, and has been shown in some studies to help with the remission of brain tumors and other tumors as well. When I was doing my advanced herbal training, I ran into some really interesting information about oxalic acid and its effect on cancer. Oxalic acid is a sour compound that's found in our blood, but it's also found in spinach and rhubarb. I just made some strawberry rhubarb this week, which had some last night with vanilla ice cream. It was really good. It's found in the dox plants in the Rumex genus in the knotweed family, like yellow dock and sheep sorrel and so forth. But it binds to calcium, and also binds to magnesium as an acidic substance. So kidney stones are calcium oxalate, which may be because there isn't enough magnesium to counterbalance the calcium. And really high amounts of oxalic acid and oxalates are toxic to the body, which is why the leaves of the rhubarb are toxic, because they contain too much of the oxalates, but the stem has just enough to make it kind of pleasantly sour. This don't seem to bother most people, but if people have a history of kidney disorders or gout or arthritis or vulvar pain, they might want to avoid high oxalic foods. But I found a great website, which I've listed here, that gives some research that suggests that oxalic acid actually is very good at helping to prevent cancer and also to actually kill cancer cells. So it's interesting that a number of these plants have actually been used as part of anti-cancer therapy, specifically sheep sorrel. And it's also interesting that Kimberly Ballas says that a high level of free calcium, unbound calcium in the blood, increases the risk of cancer, and oxalic acid binds to calcium and magnesium. So sheep sorrel is another one of our traditional anti-cancer herbs that has an alterative quality that contains these oxalates. It also has a little bit of anthraquinone, some glycosides. It's been shown to have some anti-leukemic action and some ability to soften and dissolve tumors. It's a very cooling remedy, very anti-inflammatory remedy, soothing remedy, and yellow dock, which is Rumex crispus, has very similar properties but a little stronger laxative action. This is a remedy that we don't have in Nature Sunshine, but is a very strong alternative and has been part of a number of traditional anti-cancer formulas. It has some pain-killing ability, which is important because pain can be a big problem with cancer. I've in several cases actually just worked with people who had cancer where there wasn't too much hope for the person to survive, just help them not be in so much pain and just help make them more comfortable. It helps to reduce edema, cell proliferation, and proliferation of activated T lymphocytes in joints, so it reduces rheumatoid arthritis. It's been traditionally used as a remedy for clearing up skin conditions and so forth, but also has a useful remedy when cancer has invaded the lymph and the lymph nodes and is in the glandular system. This is another very strong alternative. It's a toxic botanical. It's one that you have to be a professional herbalist to get a hold of, or you've got to make it yourself. It's called poke, either the poke root or the poke berries. Because it's toxic, it has to be used very, very carefully. It It's a very strong lymphatic cleanser. It really has some strong detoxifying action, and it has some compounds that have been shown to have some cancer-killing activity. So this one might even have a little bit of cytotoxicity, and it's really, really good for lymphomas or other things. So my take on this one is what it does is it stimulates the immune system. It clears lymph and helps the tissues detoxify, and it also stimulates the factors that help the body tag cancer cells so they can be destroyed. I think it's best used in cancers either that involve lymph tissue, like the breast cancer, or I've seen people who, as a tumor was shrinking, their lymph nodes, like in their armpits or whatever, became swollen, which can be due to the die-off reaction of the toxicity of the body as the cancer is dying off, which is something that medical profession doesn't deal with very well, which is helping the body detoxify from all that, die-off of killing all those cells. It can kind of congest the immune system. So you have to use this with appropriate caution, because you can get very sick or even kill somebody if you take too much of this. The safest way to use this is get a hold of poke oil, which actually I believe can be purchased even by non-professional herbalists, and you can rub it in a little bit into the breasts or into where the swollen lymph nodes are, and it's going to soften the tissue, much like a castor oil pack would, only it's stronger. You can also use the tincture internally, either the poke root tincture or the tincture of the berries. What I have done in this, and I've done this with several people who've had cancer, is I've had them take the mixture of lymphatic drainage and kidney drainage that Kimberly Ballas taught me, where you put about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of each in a quart of water, and then I just have them add, when that's not quite strong enough to really get the job done because the lymph system is really backed up, I have them add just a few drops, 2 or 3 drops of the poke tincture to that, and that really helps to clear the lymph out in a very big way. So let's move on to antioxidants. Since cancer is believed to be caused by mutation due to free radical damage, antioxidants can help prevent that damage, which can be useful both in prevention and in treatment. Now, one of the remedies that's antioxidant, and it's also alterative and might be a tad cytotoxic too, is chaparral. Chaparral, unfortunately, is not readily available in the marketplace anymore. Nature's Sunshine, when I first joined, sold chaparral, and then there was a problem where the FDA came after it. It contains a really potent antioxidant called NDGA that inhibits the energy producing capability of cancer cells. So it's sort of like because it slows down oxidation so much, it actually inhibits energy production, which means it has a little bit of an effect like pawpaw, slowing down the energy. And when cancer cells lose energy, that can cause them to commit apoptosis, or preprogrammed cell death. The flavonoids in chaparral have antiviral and antifungal properties, and it's a very strong kind of cleansing remedy. It's been used for skin conditions and infections and that sort of thing. The Merck manual basically says that the NDGA is an antioxidant, but it's anti-neoplastic, which means that it prevents the development, growth, and proliferation of malignant cells. So this is a known anti-cancer compound that this plant contains. The problem is that well, we'll get to that in a minute. So since chaparral inhibits aerobic combustion, or oxygen activity in cells, it has this oil. The seeds basically have to have this stuff wash away in heavy rain before they can actually sprout. So that inhibits them from sprouting when there's not enough moisture to get a plant to grow. Because they contain so much of this chemical, their metabolism is very slow, which was probably why these chaparral plants live a long, 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 long time. Michael Moore, though, says that chaparral can stimulate cancer cells in some cases and inhibit them in others, so he didn't like using it as an anti-cancer remedy. My friend Matthew Wood told me that the Native Americans who live in down here in southern Utah, that he knows some of them, and one of them told him that when they were doing the nuclear testing in Nevada, this area is downwind of where they did the nuclear testing in Nevada, the Native Americans would go and actually stand on the mountain and see the blast from a long distance. So he said that the natives who drank their chaparral tea regularly didn't get cancer, but the ones that didn't all died of cancer who did that. In the 1970s, the FDA basically suggested the removal of chaparral for internal use because of evidence that it had hepatotoxicity. I think the evidence was pretty sketchy. There were 70 cases. There was tons of chaparral being consumed in the marketplace. The possibility is that the capsules and tablets that were used, which is not the traditional dosage form, may have just in some people with more sensitive livers had a little bit of a problem. I remember years ago that they said they couldn't figure out some of these cases, but in some cases these people were drinking alcohol and other things. But if you did decide to use chaparral, I wouldn't use it if there were pre-existing kidney or liver problems, or you discontinue it if you see signs of liver problems occurring. And you would, just as a precaution, not use it in pregnancy or nursing. The safest way to use it is as a tea. That's the way the Native Americans used it, but Michael Moore also suggested you could make it into a tincture, and it has been used topically in anti-cancer salves, which is probably a very safe way to use it. The turmeric is another antioxidant, and it basically exerts an antioxidant effect that's powerful enough to reduce the formation to reduce the effect of carcinogens causing cancer. It also has been shown in some studies to enhance the effectiveness of killing of chemotherapy and killing bowel cancer really, really significantly. It's been shown to inhibit skin and oral cancers, and an ointment has reduced the size of skin lesions, and taking it has also reduced the progression of colon cancer. Immune stimulants are one of the things I think that's really, really important in cancer treatment, even if a person is doing radiation and chemotherapy and surgery. This is because the immune system gets knocked down. Years ago, I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Bruce Halstead, a medical doctor and medical research scientist who was very favorable to alternative medicine. And he told me, he said, the way we treat cancer in this country does not make molecular sense. He says our bodies make cancer cells all the time. The immune system destroys them. Cancer is not a disease of cancer cells. Cancer is a disease of a reduced immune response. That has stuck with me for a long, long time. And since stress reduces immune response, that's probably why there's a big factor of stress in development of cancer. So it's very important. Also, a lot of chemotherapy really destroys the immune system. Had a friend here in St. George that was in a men's group that I belonged to. He got cancer. He went the orthodox medical route. He was on an experimental drug that they were using for the thing. It wiped out his immune system. He caught a antibiotic resistant infection in the hospital, and it killed him. Even though the chemotherapy they were using was killing cancer cells, he died of an infection. So boosting the immune system and helping the immune system work better, it's too bad I didn't know about that, because I could have gone in and just loaded them up with the silver or something, but it's a shame. But anyway, so these are very, very important remedies. And the biggest class of remedies here is medicinal fungi, which contain beta-glucans. These are very powerful immune modulators, which basically means they help the immune system work better. They also modulate autoimmune disorders, so they are helpful in either case, in either stimulating or calming down the immune system. And we just did this webinar for the AHG where the guy talked about using these fungi for allergies to get the gut immunity working better so that you reduce allergic reactions. So anyway, beta-glucans can increase natural killer cell activity by as much as 400% and stimulate the production of tumor necrosis factor and other substances which initiate this process. So your immune system has like switches, because you wouldn't want these immune cells to go around and just killing healthy cells at random. Of course, that's what happens in an autoimmune disease, is that certain healthy things wind up getting targeted. So the body has ways of tagging things that need to be destroyed, and this, we're talking about helping the tagging system so it properly tags these cells as abnormal and kills them. So anyway, it helps to draw the macrophages, the cytotoxic T cells and NK cells into the tumor areas and so forth. Now, a problem with this is that the beta-glucans in fungus are so tightly bound to the chitin, the cellular structure, like almost like the skeleton of the mushroom, that they basically are going to pass through. If you just ground it up and took it in a capsule, it's going to pass right through you because your body's not going to be able to break it down. So the traditional way that these were used is to basically they were decocted in hot water to basically break them down and make like a mushroom broth, and that breaks this stuff down, frees it, makes it bioavailable, and then by simmering them, you basically get the thing. Now the other way is you can buy products where this has been water extracted and then it's been dried. So for example, the reishi that we're going to talk about in a minute, or the Ganoderma, is the principal ingredient in the Chinese formula blood stimulator. So if you get the concentrated blood stimulator, then you're going to get more beta-glucans out of that, more immune activity out of that, because it was water extracted and then reconcentrated. And so there are mushroom products out there that are like that. So one of these medicinal mushrooms that acts as a tonic, builds up the immune system, balances out the immune system, and kind of just improves overall stamina and strength is cordyceps. The shot here is the cordyceps mushrooms, which are the fungi attaches to a little worm that burrows in the ground and basically eats it up and turns it into a mushroom, which looks like a caterpillar. But what we get is not this kind of traditional cordyceps. It's actually been grown in big vats on a rice medium rather than on caterpillars. But it's a great just general tonic. And again, you need general tonics that are going to help people to when they're having cancer, to build up their system. One of the best mushrooms for this is maitake. I've had the privilege of hunting maitakes with my friend Calvin Marcus in Pennsylvania. We found several, and his wife sliced them and put a little flour on them and sauteed them in butter, and they were yummy. And each one of these big mushrooms is worth $300 to $500, so we were eating like $100 or more of these mushrooms. It was just lovely. And of course, we were eating them fresh, so they were just really, really tasty. But this one is really got some strong anti-cancer activity. It really stimulates the immune system. It helps induce the apoptosis, the preprogrammed cell death of the cancer cells, and it also balances blood sugar and has a lot of other beneficial activities. It is an immune stimulator. So a lot of us use immune stimulator with people who have cancer to build up their immune system. But if you can also get a hold of some straight maitake, for the person, that's good too. And then the Ganoderma that I mentioned earlier, the reishi, is another one that also acts as a tonic to the whole body. It builds up strength, it improves shortness of breath, stimulates and modulates the immune system, and basically just improves general overall health. Last year at the American Herbalist Guild Conference in Florida, got to listen to Dr. Paul Stamets, who is an expert on medicinal mushrooms, gave one of the most fascinating lectures I've ever heard, talking about these medicinal mushrooms and these fungi that live in the soil, and he makes products of a variety of these different things. But he had his mother got a hold of him, and she had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and basically they told her she was going to die. And he basically took some of the mushroom products that he makes, and he put his mother on them, and she lived. She survived stage 4 cancer. So these can be really powerful. So definitely consider using some of those with people. This is one that's also an immune stimulator. It's not available from Nature's Sunshine, although the seeds of this are called biota seed, and they are found in nervous fatigue formula. And they're kind of a general tonic to the body, and I find they have some really nice blood sugar balancing effects. The leaves, though, are a really strong immune system remedy and help to fight infections, and have been used for some various types of cancer. We don't have that one, but we do have Animu. I haven't used Animu much, but it has been used in, I believe, in Mexico for cancer and also for leukemia. It's an immune stimulant and has a variety of compounds that basically could be beneficial in helping with cancer. Our last group of remedies are the cytotoxic remedies. These are the remedies that actually are not so much building up the immune system or reducing oxidative stress or cleaning out the body, but are more directly trying to kill the cancer cells, to get the cells to die off. But I saved them for the last because a lot of people, this is the first thing they think of, and they miss the part about doing the underlying work of working on the body and the person's general health, because and you need to think about that first. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Ananaceous acetogenins, which are in the pawpaw. These are compounds that have anti-tumor, cytotoxic, and also pesticidal activities found in the Ananaceae family. They've discovered over 400 of these that are pesticides, anti-cancer, antifungal, and antibacterial in their nature. So we have a very unique product in Nature's Sunshine, a very good product called Pawpaw Celreg, which is a standardized extract of these acetogenins from the pawpaw plant. It's a cytotoxic remedy. The parts that contain the most of these acetogenins are the seeds, the unripe fruit, and the twigs in the early spring. And I ran into a Native American healer, and they used all 3 of those. We have a standardized extract of the twigs. Anyway, the mechanisms of pawpaw are fourfold. The primary mechanism is that it slows down ATP production inside the cell, which depletes energy. Since cancer cells are use about 15 times more energy than regular cells, you slow their energy down a little bit and they commit suicide. That doesn't happen so much with ordinary cells, so basically it's low toxicity to ordinary cells, but more toxic to cancer cells. That slowing down of ATP has several other auxiliary benefits. One, since ATP is needed to basically get DNA and RNA to replicate themselves so the cells can divide and grow, it slows down the reproduction of cells, which slows down the cancer spreading. Cancer also has to have new blood vessels form into the tumor to feed the tumor, and that's called angiogenesis. and basically it helps stop angiogenesis. And the fourth benefit, which I think is really useful about PAPA, because it can be used in conjunction with standard chemotherapy, is that people will get cancer, they'll do the chemotherapy, they kill off the cancer cells, and then later the cancer will come back. Well, I think the reason that happens is because they never cleaned up the environment that caused the cancer in the first place. They were focused on just killing cancer cells and not changing the underlying environment. But what happens a lot of times when the cancer comes back is the cancer cells are now resistant to the chemotherapy, and they have created mechanisms to pump the chemotherapy drugs out of the cell so they can't kill the cell, and these require ATP. So basically, this actually helps restore the functionality of chemotherapy. PAPA does not work on lymphomas and any kind of soft tissue cancer. It only works on tumors. So remember that. There's no point in giving it to somebody who has Hodgkin's or some kind of leukemia or whatever, because it's not going to help. It's only going to help if there's actually a tumor. And it's not going to help. No remedy works for everybody all the time either. So although PAPA has very low toxicity, you don't want to slow down energy production in your body when you're not sick, when you don't have an infection or you don't have cancer cells. So this is not a preventive remedy. This is something to use as an active cytotoxic remedy. The standard dose is 4 capsules, and I think it's best to space those out through the day. But if it's tolerated well, you can double, triple, or possibly even quadruple the dose. I've known people who've gone up even higher than that. So it just depends on how well you tolerate the stuff. However, I've talked to some people who basically got to a really high dose, like 25, 30, and they were experiencing kind of dizziness. They were getting tired. They might feel lightheaded. Of course, if you get to the point you get nauseous and throw up, that's too much. You don't want to have it take your energy down, so you don't go overboard on this. A lot of people like to go overboard on things, and I think like I say, 2 or 3 times is the normal dose is probably pretty reasonable if you can tolerate it, but basically not other. Now, a closely related plant also in the Annanaceae family is Graviola, and which is also cytotoxic, as it's been called Brazilian pawpaw. Dr. McLaughlin, who developed the pawpaw cell reg, was also the one who investigated this plant. He said that it contained acetogenins like pawpaw, but it's much weaker than pawpaw. And the other problem is all of the products that are sold of this out there are just extracts of the plant. They're not standardized extracts. They haven't concentrated the acetogenins, and so it's going to be weaker. Probably has some benefit, but going to be much weaker than our pawpaw. I forgot to put this thing in when I put the slides up, and so I'm going to have to repost this, and I got to get a picture of some apricots to stick in here. But this apricot seeds contain laetrile or amygdalin, which was sometimes once called vitamin B17. This is really considered quackery by the medical profession, but there is some evidence. I know that Dr. Bruce Halstead believed laetrile was actually quite effective. So it's possible that eating some apricot seeds could have some benefit for some people. I don't know. It's just something to consider. Apricots and almonds are really closely related, so apricot seeds basically actually taste a lot like almonds. I've tried them before. Bloodroot or sanguinaria is a cytotoxic remedy that's most often used as an escharotic. It's very corrosive. If you were to take it internally, you'd have to really dilute it or put it in as a small part of a formula or whatever. It's a toxic botanical, but it's been typically used in what are called escharotic salves, which are used to eat away tumors that are visible on the surface of the body. So it's been used on carcinomas and sarcomas. Eli Jones, though, believed it was one of the best remedies also for rectal cancer. This is, again, a toxic one. You have to study it, make sure you knew how to use it properly. This is one I've never used, but the information is out there. It's called Sundew, and it's anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, and it basically has been shown to inhibit that angiogenesis, which causes the blood vessel formation in tumors. So it helps to basically inhibit tumor growth. This one, Madagascar periwinkle, contains some anti-cancer compounds that are actually used in orthodox medicine. Vincristine and vincoblast, which are used for Hodgkin's disease and leukemia. So if you see someone who's about to use, who's on those things and they're looking at using these drugs, these actually come from a plant. They're actually relatively. I think this is where they're using a drug like this from a plant compound. I think that you're much better off than some of the other stuff they do. Another cytotoxic remedy is mistletoe, which a lot of European studies have shown helps the natural killer cells fight cancer. And the nice thing about mistletoe is it's a nervous system remedy for like the nerves and replenishes the nerves. And so since that's one of the underlying things with cancer is that nervousness, this one could be beneficial. It was introduced into the Materia Medica by Rudolf Steiner with his Anthroposophy School of Medicine and Science. And because mistletoe is a parasite and cancer is a parasite, he saw a connection between mistletoe and cancer and considered that cancer was a disease due to faltering spiritual defenses. In other words, the person's ability to spiritually defend themselves was down. The research has shown that mistletoe can kill cancer cells and boost the immune system, and it's sold under trade names such as Iscador. It became widely recognized in the United States when Suzanne Summers, who decided to use this instead of chemotherapy following surgery and radiation therapy for breast cancer. And it's used in Europe for a wide variety of cancers, which are listed there. Obviously, this is not an herb. You'd have to, go find it, but it's one of the options that's available. So we'll kind of wrap up here by looking at some traditional anti-cancer formulas, the variations of which are used in treatment of cancer today, kind of see how people have put some of this stuff together. So Eli Jones, who he started off the whole program with, this was his formula. It has the figwort, which we talked about as a very strong alternative. Phytolacca, which is somewhat cytotoxic and also a strong alternative. The Rumex crispus or yellow dock, that has the oxalic acid, a little bit detoxifying. Some other herbs that I'm not so familiar with, while there are some juniper berries in here, which are a diuretic. In the 1920s, Harry Hoxsey was promoting the Hoxsey formula, and he claimed it came from his great-grandfather. And this is a very controversial formula, but the Biomedical Center in Mexico uses this, and a couple of herb companies sell various kind of takes on this particular formula. You notice that the chief ingredient is red clover, and it also contains burdock that we talked about, and it also contains poke. So it's got some of those carcinogenic herbs as well as some things that are detoxifying and lymph draining and so forth. Essiac is believed to come from the Ojibwe Indians and was promoted by a nurse named Renee Casey. Essiac is actually her name spelled backwards. Nature Sunshine sells this formula as ET. There's a whole bunch of other companies that sell different knockoffs of it. It contains the burdock and the sheep sorrel along with slippery elm and turkey rhubarb. I've made Essiac as a glycerite. It's traditionally made kind of as a syrup, but it's more of an alternative remedy, okay, rather than a cytotoxic remedy. It doesn't really contain any strong cytotoxic remedies unless the oxalic acid in the sheep sorrel is where the oxalic acid has some cytotoxicity. Jason Winters made a tea of 3 herbs, which he claims cured his cancer. I believe that the original tea contained chaparral, and Nature Sunshine at one time had a version of Jason Winters' tea, and I believe the 3 ingredients in it were red clover, chaparral, and burdock. When the chaparral got taken away, I think he changed it around a little bit, but it's still out there on the marketplace. And one other very controversial therapy is escharotics, which I've mentioned earlier, which is topical salves or pastes that are applied to skin cancers or moles or cancers that are visible on the surface of the body, and it eats away the diseased tissue. I've used this therapy. I've used it on moles. I had a mole on my thigh that basically started to grow, which is like dangerous warning thing, you know, one of the warning signs of cancer. And I put escharotic on it and basically removed a thing that fell out the size of a dime out of my leg. I actually used escharotic on my dad for removing a couple of melanomas, skin cancers, and I've used it a lot for warts. I've only had one person tell me well, other than the fact that you got to be careful because if you don't do it right, you can get scars. I've only had one person who gave me a really bad side effect where they had put it on a wart on their knuckle, and the wart, I guess the roots of it went down into the nerve, and it basically ate the nerve into her finger and kind of paralyzed her finger. So this is, again, something that kind of can be dangerous, but but it's certainly not as dangerous, I think, as radiation and surgery and some of those things. There's a whole bunch of escharotics that have been used through the years. Samuel Thompson basically made a really strong decoction of red clover, and then he basically boiled it down into a paste and then painted that on things. William Fox used the tinctures of blue flag, red clover, and bloodroot mixed together. Eli Jones had one of these, which he used calcium chloride, zinc chloride, and bloodroot with glycerin mixed into it. Hoxsey had one, antimonium trisulfate, zinc chloride, and bloodroot. John Christopher created black ointment, which is basically a salve with chaparral, red clover, comfrey, plantain, chickweed, poke root, and mullein, and also pine tar, the pine gum sap, all of which are really strong drying agents. The one I've used the most is called sea herb, which is a black walnut, burdock, white oak bark, and minerals, which I'm assuming are probably the zinc chloride and maybe the chromium chloride or something, but they're not on the label. And then Kim makes one out of the Nature's Sunshine black ointment, which is a lot like the Christopher product, but I don't think it has pokeberries in it. And she just mixes some pawpaw sulreg with the black ointment and then applies that topically. The way you use these is you apply them directly over the wart or the skin cancer or whatever or the mole, and you put a Band-Aid on them, and be careful to get it just right on the tissue that you want to eat away. Then you change it every day. Remove the Band-Aid, wash it off, and apply it fresh. When a white ring forms around the edge of the mole or the wart or whatever, you stop applying it, and then it should work its way out, and then you want to use some kind of healing salve afterwards to make sure you don't get any scarring as a result of it. But this brings us to our question and answer period, and I've already answered about doing the skin cancers with escharotics. Someone said, love what they shared about burdock nourishing a person's root in cancer. My breast cancer lady was taking BP, which contains burdock, and when I told her she didn't need it anymore, it was as though I was taking her life away. She said, so she stayed on it one a day, and she's so content to truly loves the burdock. Yeah, so yeah, burdock's such a mild remedy. You can take it. Great. There used to be a great formula with pau d'arco, burdock, and red clover. Do you know why they took the burdock out of that formula? I'm not sure. But anyway, that's a really nice blood purifying combination, pau d'arco, burdock, and red clover. If you can get people to drink a tea, you can make a tea out of some of these things too. And I also answered what escharotics are. And anyway, and so if you have any questions about If you have some questions about escharotics or some of that kind of stuff, feel free to contact me privately, and I can, help you with that sort of thing. But because you really have to do it. Is the healing salve the golden salve? Yeah, you can use, if you're using the Pawpaw Celreg with black ointment, what I would use is I'd use the golden salve for the healing salve, just to help the tissue heal properly after the thing comes out. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Like I said, the main reason I wanted to do this was just to kind of talk about some of the options, some of the remedies that are out there that that can help, so that you can kind of thoughtfully think through, what kinds of remedies might be helpful for specific people with specific types of cancers or problems that they might be looking at. And remember that not all remedies are designed to just kill cancer cells. You've also got to look at, this boosting the immune system, this gentle detoxification that alternatives do, preventing the oxidative damage, and so forth. Would the Healing AC cream work as a healing cream? Yes, it would, if you still have some of that hanging around. So just, like I say, I actually have, some of the toxic botanicals and some of those things at my office. So if you do have a case where you think you might need some of that, just let me know, and we can see, if we can work out getting you some. But Nature's Sunshine obviously has a lot of really good remedies. I just wanted you to be acquainted with a broader range of options if some of the stuff in Nature's Sunshine doesn't work. Okay, thank you very much for attending.